little bit overexposed. I think I'm just gonna do the video in here. So this is the Nikon F3. First released in 1980 and designed by Italian car designer Giorgetto Giugiano, the Nikon F3 is the longest produced Nikon professional SLR, produced from 1980 to 2001, for a little bit over 20 years. And I can totally understand why, because this, along with the Leica M6, is one of the film cameras that I could say could be your first and last. And now it's time for a super fast spec run through. The shutter speed has a minimum of 8 seconds plus bulb and a maximum of 1/8,000th of a second. Aperture priority is available, flash sync up to 1/80th of a second, but no hot shoe, so you have to use a cable. Exposure compensation is available. There's a multiple exposure switch. There's a high point viewfinder that makes it easy to see the entire finder while wearing glasses. The viewfinder is removable too, and replaceable to suit your needs. You can also change the focus screen to whatever you want. There's tons of types online. You can see both the shutter speed and aperture in the viewfinder. The shutter speed display uses ambient light as its backlight, which means the battery lasts more than a year. There's a depth of field preview button on the front of the camera. The switch above the depth of field preview allows you to lock up the mirror to use fisheye lenses and the like. The lower button on the front allows you to lock the exposure meter reading, and the switch on it allows you to trigger the shutter manually at 1/500th of a second shutter speed, which is useful if you run out of batteries. It also has a 10-second self-timer. The switch is behind the shutter dial, and there's a red LED on the front that lets you know how much time is left by blinking slower or faster. Now, this isn't really including all the accessories that you can get for the Nikon F3 or the lens mount. As for the lens mount, it takes all Nikon vintage lenses and all Nikon DSLR lenses or SLR lenses in general before 2007. And it's not compatible with the newer lenses without aperture rings, or obviously it's not compatible with the new Nikon Z6 or Z7 mirrorless lenses because, you know, differences. So. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to load film into the camera. And to start, you're going to need to press this button right here. Push it over to, let me see, your right, and pull up on the film rewind. And that's just going to unlock the back. And now obviously if you have any film in the camera already, then you need to take that out because we're gonna need to load a new roll of film into it. So now you're going to make sure that the film rewind is pushed down so that you can actually pull the film over without it just coming loose. Now you're going to take your film, this is some Cinestill 800T, and put it over this these notches right here and stick the end of it into this, which will then pull it taut over the in front of behind the shutter. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So now I stuck in the end, as you can see, and I'm going to shoot off a shot and kind of pray that this pulls in. Make sure that it's aligned as it goes. It looks like it's aligned fine, and it will slowly pull taut. So you can see I'll finish pulling this, and boom. And I'll just fire another shot and just show you as it pulls in. Now, this film is particularly hard to load. Most films won't be like bowing all over the place like that because I had already loaded it into the camera for the previous video. But now that I'm re-recording it, I pulled it back out so I could show you again. And that's basically how you load the camera. And one thing to note about the Nikon F3 is after you have it loaded in, it's going to show 1/80th. It won't meter for anything until you fire off enough shots for the first frame to be in view. So you have to keep shooting, and it was like 3 or 4 shots, and now it's metering just fine. So if you're confused the first time after loading why it won't meter properly, that's why. You just have to shoot off a shot or two and make sure that you're on that first frame of usable film. And that's how you load the Nikon F3. It's super simple. Anyone can do it. Easy as the Leica. Okay, but enough discussion of specs and film loading. What's this camera like to use? Well, it's great. And one of the highest compliments that I can give it is that I would not hesitate to use it as a flail or projectile type weapon in case of the need of self-defense. This camera is built like a tank, and it's beautiful too. Most Nikon F3s are black paint, which means that once it wears a little bit, the brass underneath shows and just makes it even more beautiful. So honestly, whenever I bought my Nikon F3, I didn't even buy the newest looking one. I bought one that was already a little bit pre-loved, just so I could get that beautiful brass showing type look. I will say though, if you do want it to be like the most beautiful and you wear contacts or just are like some superhuman who doesn't need glasses or contacts, then you should probably get the one that doesn't have the high point viewfinder. Just because, I mean, it's a little bit more pretty. The camera is also a little bit heavy, but not too heavy for daily carry in my opinion. The grip is kind of like a Leica's, in that most of the time you'll be cradling the camera in your hand, but when you do want to hold it vertically with your right hand on top, then you'll have a better grip than with a Leica because of the extra frontal indentation. The extremely wide shutter range is also convenient for portraiture during daytime and long exposures at night. But the shutter is extremely loud, which doesn't make it impossible to use for street photography, especially on like a busy street. But if you want to be a little bit more subtle, then you'll probably want to go for something with a quieter shutter. The Nikon F3 just boys loud, what can I say? The meter on this camera is extremely accurate, and the aperture priority auto mode is great for speed reliant or casual shooting. But ironically, the more advanced electronic features of this camera, like the aperture priority, do make it a little bit less appealing to purists. The camera also can only shoot at 1/60th of a second if you run out of batteries, but the batteries last forever, so that's a pretty rare situation. I'll also say that the film advance on this camera is probably one of the smoothest out there because it uses ball bearings throughout the entire thing, and you can barely tell if film is in the camera at all. The lens mount on the Nikon F3 is great too, and offers a wide range of lenses that will get you any desirable combination of vintage goodness and modern sharpness. The prices are good too, although newer or rare lenses can still be quite expensive. Subjectively, I don't think it reaches the gold standard of the Leica M mount, but it compares favorably against the more reasonably priced Canon and Minolta competitors. The price of the Nikon F3 nowadays ranges from anywhere from $200 to $500 or more for special edition models. I would recommend getting it as cheap as possible as long as no parts are broken, because these cameras look better well used, and they're basically invincible. In conclusion, I recommend the trusty Nikon F3, especially for portrait photographers and more casual analog photographers. For street photographers, this is definitely an option still, but I would recommend you look elsewhere if you want a camera with a quieter shutter. But nevertheless, I think the Nikon F3 is one of the more valuable and compelling film cameras that you can buy today. Hey, I hope you enjoyed that video, and if you did, make sure to like and subscribe down below and tick the bell by the subscribe button so you don't miss any upcoming videos. Also, if you really enjoyed the video, then you can buy me a coffee with the link in the description. Also, make sure to check out my other videos. I have reviews of the Minolta Autocord and Leica M6 on my channel, and have a great day.